Hi there. Okay, so this is going to be the second part of a tutorial on creating a HUD for CryEngine using Flash and scaleform. So this is what we had at the end of the first part of the tutorial. So just previewing it in the scaleform previewer for Flash. And we've got a button that kind of moves around, rotates in 3D to look at our cursor, and we can click a button, we get a tooltip telling us what that button does, and when we click this button you can see there that there's an FS command. This will get sent to CryEngine. Okay, so just quickly, I just want to show that I've actually modified some of my code for this from the first part of this tutorial. The reason for doing that is I think this is just a bit of a neater way of doing it, and it also makes the XML that we'll be creating in a bit a little bit easier to set up. So what I've done is, this is the mouse cursor that we made, this little blue box. And we used to have some code on this. I've removed that action script from this, and instead I've just added that action script to the main scene. So within this main scene we've got this function called onMouseMove, and what that function was, every time we moved the mouse it was updating the rotation of the button. So now, as well as updating the rotation of this button, I've just used that same function to also update the position of the cursor on the screen. So all I've said is that mouse cursor, which is the name of this, so this is this cursor is called mouse cursor, so I've just said mouse cursor dot underscore x, which basically just means the x position of the mouse cursor equals underscore root dot underscore x mouse. So that line of code there is just saying the x position of this mouse cursor box should be set to the x position of the mouse whenever we move the mouse, and then the same thing for y. So just change your code to match that. Copy those two lines in, and everything should be set up and ready to go. So once we've got those lines, we need to our Flash file is now set up, so we need to publish our Flash file. We need to make sure that so if you click off everything you'll get these publish settings, and we need to make sure that our target player is Flash 8. I think that's the highest you can go up to with the scaleform that CryEngine uses, and it needs to be ActionScript 2. And then if you click on Publish Settings, so you can set it there, target Flash Player 8, script ActionScript 2, and we need to give this a name. So I've called mine, the one that I've just done, I called Start Menu. I'm going to call this one Start Menu 2, and I'm just going to click Publish. And then you should see whatever folder you saved your Flash file into, which for me is this folder, in my CryEngine folder, Game Flash Main Menu. You should see a Swift file appear in there. So this Flash file is, CryEngine doesn't care about this Flash file, it doesn't need this Flash file. It's just this SWF file that it needs. So what we need to do is we need to copy and paste this SWF file, and the place that we need to put it is into CryEngine Game Libs UI and paste it into there. If you don't see these folders, it's a good idea to go into Game, and you should have all these pack files in here. You can open these pack files with something like 7-zip. So if you download 7-zip, you should just be able to open these and browse them like they were folders. So it's a good idea to go into the game data.pack file, into libs, and just unpack this whole UI folder. So drag and drop it into there, and then you should be able to go in there and you can see all of the GFX files and all of the XML files that are set up for the HUD already in CryEngine, and this stuff will start to make sense very shortly when we start going through how to set this stuff up. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do with this is you can see this is the menu that I set up previously, and it's called startmenu.gfx. So this is the new one that we've just copied in, and this needs to be .gfx as well. So there's nothing else that we need to do other than to tell that is a GFX file. So just rename it like that, and that's fine. That's good to go. So CryEngine can now read this file. What the next step is to, although CryEngine can read this file, it doesn't know that it's supposed to be reading this file yet. And the way that we tell it to read this file is to set up an XML. So if you go into your UI elements folder within game libs UI elements, you should have a few of these XML files set up already. So let's start with our dialogues XML, and let's edit this dialogues XML file. So I'm using Notepad++. You can use whatever it is that you want. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to File. So I'm going to open up the dialogues XML, and I'm going to do a file save as, and I'm going to call mine start menu 3 because I've already got start menu 2. Right, so now we've saved that, and we can start modifying this file to work for our new menu that we've set up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll just go through this line by line. Our XML is going to be a lot simpler than this one, although this one's not too bad. But the first thing we want to do is we want to rename this. These UI elements kind of group a load of UI elements together. So our individual elements are pretty much our individual GFX files, and we can have more than one kind of group together. But for the moment, let's just call this any old name. I'm going to call mine start menu 3. And then within the wrapper, the UI elements wrapper, we've got the individual elements. So we just have one element, and we'll call this start menu 3 as well. Or you guys will probably want to just call it start menu 1. All of this stuff in here, we can get rid of all of that because we can set all of this stuff up in CryEngine. So all of this mouse events, key events, cursor, all that stuff can go. Just nice and easy. And next thing we want to do is our GFX file. So obviously we want to point this towards the file that we've made, which in my case is called start menu 2. So this is getting a bit complicated now because I'm calling my file start menu 3 and pointing it towards start menu 2. But you guys should just be calling everything start menu probably. The layer, I think this is like if you have lots of different HUD elements that you're overlaying on top of each other. I'm presuming that this layer tag here just tells it where to place it. So if this is layer 99 and you made another one that was layer 98, the one that was layer 98 would show on top of this one. I think that's what it does. I'm not 100% sure, but let's just set that to layer 0, and that seems to work fine. Constraints are... Okay, so the constraints are we want our file, we want our menu to fill a screen no matter what screen size people have. So no matter what resolution they're running at, we want it to fill the screen. We don't want one person with small resolution to only be able to see the middle of our file and someone with a large resolution to have our file kind of just as a little tiny thing in the middle of their screen. So this is what these constraints allow us to do. We can just leave these set up as they are. We can change these in CryEngine as well. So yeah, just leave that how it is. The next section is functions. We don't have any functions in our Flash file, so we can delete this. I've not investigated these functions yet. I think what the function does is it allows CryEngine to kind of talk to the Flash file. So if we were shooting our gun and our ammo counter needs to go down, then we'd use the functions to update our HUD. I believe that's what it's for. That might be wrong though. Like I said, I've not investigated these, so if someone can shed some light on that for me, that would be great. I'm sure I'll get into these functions later when I get into doing more complicated HUDs and stuff, but let's just delete. So events, we do have events, and our event is this. If you remember in here, when we press this button, so start button on press function equals this fs command here. So this fs command is where we tell CryEngine we want it to do something, and this is an event. So we do need to set up our event within the XML. So our event name can be anything, but let's call it something that makes sense, so that we know what it's kind of going to do. So let's call it something like press start game. Like I say, name this whatever you want. That's what I'm going to call it. And the fs command that's going to refer to, this is important, this needs to be exactly the same name as the fs command in the Flash document. So in my case it's new game. Description is a description of it. We don't need a description of it really, because press start game is enough of a description for me. We haven't got any parameters to this, so we can delete all of those parameters, and we just need to make sure that we end this event tag. So where we opened the event tag with the open brackets, we need to end it with a / and close bracket. We've only got one event, so we can delete this other event, and we don't have any variables, so the variables are just variables that like you would use in any programming, but we're not using any variables within, we're not storing any variables within our action script, so we don't need any of that. So we can delete those, and that should be it. That should be it for the XML. So it's pretty simple. In fact, it's really simple. All we're really doing is putting that one event in. So if we had a whole load of buttons, that we had a settings button, then we'd have a start settings, or rather press settings command, and so on and so forth, but just listed like underneath in a new event. So new event name, press settings, fs command settings. So you can add as many buttons as you want. It's very simple to do. So let's just make sure that's saved, and we can go across to CryEngine. So in CryEngine, let's go to View and Open View Pane and UI Emulator. And if you've just started up CryEngine, you shouldn't have to do this. If you already had CryEngine open, just click this reload all UI elements XML files. Give that a second. And now if we go into elements, we should see our start menu 3 in there. If you don't see your start menu that you've set up, then you've done something wrong in your XML. So just, pause the video, make sure 100% sure that what you've got is exactly the same as what's here, obviously substituting the names of your files for the names of my files. But yeah, any little error in that XML won't show up in here. So select your start menu 3. This emulator is it's like a preview window. So here's the preview window here, so we can see what our menu looks like. Nothing that we set up in here is going to actually have any effect once we shut this down. It is just literally for previewing. If you go down a bit in this window, I think this is a little bug in the new build, so you might find that your properties are just underneath this, or you might find that you have to scroll down miles and miles like I do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we want to set our the properties to be visible because we want to see it, and then you should see it pop up in your preview window. If you go into the preview window now, you'll see that nothing's working, so the mouse cursor isn't following it, the button's not doing anything like that. And the reason for that is that we need to set these flags in here to say that we want mouse events to be true. That just means that it's going to allow us to use our mouse within this window. And once that's set up, you should see that this is starting to work as we would expect. So just to show you the constraints, what I mean by the scaling, if we turn scaling off, if somebody's monitor was this size, then with scaling off, the menu's going to kind of fill their screen. So if they had a really small screen, this isn't, if people were playing on a screen this small, first of all, that'd be pretty weird, but secondly, this wouldn't really work for them. So we just want to make sure that scale is set to true, and then no matter what size screen you play on, you're going to see the menu the way that we intended for it to be seen. So we can also turn, so that's all the constraints. These are all pretty self-explanatory in there. We can also turn key events on to be true, so if we wanted people to be able to use keyboard commands within our user interface, then we'd want that to be true. Console mouse, I presume that's if you have a mouse for your console. Console mouse cursor will show that. Controller input, I think that's supposed to say controller input. So this will allow us to plug in a Xbox controller to the PC, or if we were playing on Xbox and use that controller to move our mouse around. Events exclusive, haven't got a clue. Render lockless, don't know what that does either, and force no unload, I also don't know what that does. So just leave those turned off and that seems fine. And then we can go in here and we can see our events as well, so we can check that our press start game event is set up. But that's fine for now, so let's shut down our UI emulator. So like I say, that is just a preview window. Everything that we've just done in there, all those flags that we've just checked, will all be kind of unchecked again now. And we need to set that up properly within flowgraph. So let's make a right. Okay, so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to show this menu and hide this menu. So we need to make a flowgraph. So if you go into flowgraph, just click on the flowgraph button. Then we need to make an action, a UI action for showing the HUD and a UI action for hiding the HUD. Once we've got those, we can call that action from anywhere within flowgraph. So we can, we can tell it when we want to hide it, we can tell it when we want to show it. But we need that action to have those to be able to control that. So what we want to do is we want to go File, New UI Action. And let's make a new action called, so I'm going to call mine Start Menu 3. And I'm going to put _hide. Just call it something descriptive, it doesn't really matter. And let's make another new UI action called Start Menu 3 _show. So my namings are obviously a bit weird because I've been through and kind of done this already to check how to do it all. Once we've done that, we can browse to our flow graphs within this little section here. So just open up UI Actions and find the Start Menu 3. Let's start with the hide one. And we want to add a node to start and stop this action. So if we go to right click, add node, UI action, start, right click, add node, UI action, end. So this is just, it's literally just setting a start and an end point for what's going to happen when we call this action. So anything that we put in between these two nodes now is going to happen. We want to this Boolean value in here, disable action. So this says if set to true, the flow graph is disabled for default and it'll be enabled once it gets started. So we want this to be true because we basically don't want any of this stuff to happen unless we actually call the function or call this action for it to happen. So let's just make sure that those are set to true. And then, so this is to hide this menu, so all we need to do now is put an action in to actually hide the menu when we call this. So if we go to add node, UI, display and display, and we just want to say when we start this, hide the display, and once we've hidden it, end the action, and this flow graph is done. So that's it for this, except for we just need to tell it what element it is that we want it to hide. So the element is start, in my case it's Start Menu 3. So when we start the action, hide Start Menu 3 and then finish. That's it for this. So that's set up. Let's drag a box around these and copy them, and let's paste them into our Start Menu 3 show action. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. So this one there's a few other things we want to do when we show this, because we want to show the action, we also want to set up a few things. So this will make sense once I start doing it. So let's add a new node, UI display, config, and another one, add node, UI display, constraints. So this config stuff is what we set in that UI emulator, but when we set it in here, we're kind of setting it for, we're properly setting it. So we're not just setting up a preview, we're setting up what's actually going to happen when we play the game. So let's just say when we start this action, first of all we want to set up these configs. So start action goes to set, and we want our mouse events to be true, and let's set our key events to be true, and actually let's set all of these to be true. So once we've set those, we then want to set up our constraints, and our constraints are just basically allowing us to scale our menu up and down and make it full screen, all that sort of stuff. So I think the only thing you should need to set in here is scale to be true. Once we've set our mouse events to be true, and we've set our scaling up correctly, then once we've set those, we can show our display. And then once we've showed the display, we can end this action, and then this flow graph will be finished. So that's those set up. Let's just save those. So just select them, go File, Save. Okay, so now let's set up our... So what we want to happen here is when we start the game, you can see when I start the game now, I've got both of these menus on top of each other. So just ignore the fact that I've got two. If you start the game, you'll probably see one. You might see none. It just depends what it's decided to do on that particular time. If you restart cryengine, you might get a different result. But we're going to control showing these and hiding these in flowgraph anyway. So this is what will happen. It'll play a cutscene, and when we click Start New Game, we're going to spawn into a new area. So the first thing that we can do is let's set up a spawn location. So I've just spawned inside this temple, and I've just put my spawn into there so that it kind of looks like something's happening when we click Start Game. If this is looking crappy, by the way, then yeah, I know. I'm kind of in the process of making it look a bit less crappy, which hopefully I'll have some tutorials online for as well once it's done. But yeah, if we want to add a spawn point, you just go to Entity, and it's in Multiplayer and Spawn Point. So just drag and drop a spawn point in wherever you want it in your level. I've already got one in here, so I'm just going to use the one that I've already got. And once it's in there, you want to select it, or right click on it, go to flow graphs, and you'll get something up that says like new flow graph. I've already put a flow graph on this, so I'll just open up the flow graph that I've already got. So this is the flow graph that I've got set up, but let's just ignore that and let's set this up from scratch. So I'll keep it over here for reference in case I want to use it. So what we want to do is we want our main menu to display as soon as we start our game. So as soon as we drop in, we want it to come up. So let's add a node into here that is going to be miscellaneous. So add node, misc, and start. So everything after this node is going to happen as soon as we start the game. So when we start the game, we want to play our cinematic. If you remember, we've got our cinematic playing in the background. So let's go to Add Node, Animations, and Play Sequence. Our sequence is called Cinematic 1. And yeah, if you want to know how to set up these cinematics, I've got a video online. You can find it from my channel that shows you how to set up cinematic like this. So when we start the game, we want to start that cinematic. Simple as that for that. We also, what else do we want to do? We want to well, we're going to be playing this cinematic, but we want to spawn at the correct place. So let's tell it to spawn at the correct place. So if we select our spawn point and right click and go add selected entities, and then we can just say as soon as we start, go to this spawn point. So from the output to spawn, and the next thing we want to do is we want to show our menu that we made so that people can use it. So let's go to Add Node, UI, and this is a... Right, so what it is we want to do here is we've set up an action to show this menu, because that's what we set up in this UI action down here. So we just need to call that action now. So we just go to Add Node, UI, Action, and Control, because we want to control that action. And then we just send our output to the start to tell it to start this action, and then we just need to tell it what UI action is that we want to start. So the UI action we want to start in my case is start menu 3 _ show. Okay, that should be done for that. So what we want to do now is when we actually click the start button, we want something to happen. So we need to, if you remember in our XML code, we had an event that was press start game, and it used that fs command that we set up in Flash. So let's access that event. So if we go to Add Node, UI, Events, Start Menu 3, press Start Game, because that's what we called our event in our XML. And all we want to do is we just want to say that when we click this button, when this event happens, we want to hide our HUD. So that will be hide our menu rather. So that will be Add Node, UI, Action, Control again. And instead of controlling the start menu show, we want to control the start menu hide. So as soon as this happens, we're just going to hide our menu, and we're going to stop our cutscene from playing. So let's just hook that up to stop trigger. So that should be that. I can delete these that I had in before, and this should all work now. I think what I'm going to get is I'm probably going to get my old menu showing up as well, and because of that I'm just going to hook up this start game to... Oh, hold on, I think I might have forgotten to do something actually. Let's just go back to our start menu hide and our start menu show. Yeah, I have. So the hide is okay. In our start menu show, I forgot to, where I've put this config in this constraints file, I forgot to actually tell it which what it is that we want to set the configs up for. So I just need to put it into element. I just need to make sure that it's start menu 3 is in there, and start menu 3 is in there as well. And start menu 3 is already in that display node, so that's okay. So let's go back to our spawn point, and I'm just going to add a new node in here when I start the game. You guys won't need to do this, but I'm just going to add a new control node to tell it to stop displaying my old HUD that I had in there before. So I'm just going to hook that up. Yeah, you won't need to do that. Right. With a lot of luck now, let's go outside, and when I hit Control G, it should start playing the cutscene, show our HUD, we should be able to use our menu, and when we click Start Game, it should spawn us to our start position. So Control G, and you can see my menu's working, the 3D's all working, my mouse cursor's working, it's following what I'm doing with the mouse. If I click Start Game, we get, well, if I hover over it, we get that tooltip, and if I click it, I spawn into the world where I set up my spawn point. And there you go. That is setting up a main menu for CryEngine using scaleform. Once you start making this stuff look a little bit prettier, you can get a really, definitely a very, very professional looking menu. So just one last thing that I'm going to do is, I was saying to you that I think I mentioned a while ago that we've got this cutscene playing, but if you just wanted a menu that filled the whole screen, the reason that the reason that we can see basically this, the reason that everything that's white in here is invisible at the moment is because we've told it that we want it to be invisible. We've said that we want the alpha value to be true. So if we go into our display, so when we show this menu, start menu 3 show, I think what we want to do is change that alpha value to be 1, and I think if we play this now that our menu will be covered the screen. Yeah, so there you go. So now you could just have whatever image and stuff you wanted underneath this. You don't have to worry about having a cutscene in the background. It just depends what you want to do, but this is, this is just like a menu. And we start a new game, and there you go. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope some of that was helpful. Cheers.